Allah, our dear friends, I hope that you would be able to hear me, and although there is not enough light, you would be able to nevertheless communicate at the level of spirit. The topic of peace is not only the concern of Bahá'í, and the issue of the peace is not only a concern of us as Bahá'ís. The whole world of humanity, in one way or another, is preoccupied with peace. The preoccupation of the people, however, is primarily in the negative. People are preoccupied with war and how they can prevent war. For us Bahá'ís, the preoccupation is with peace and how we could establish peace. Baha'u'llah states in many of his writings that one of the most important purposes it is amazing how difficult it is to stay quiet. One of the most important purposes of this dispensation is to establish peace of humanity. Baha'u'llah named that concept to be the concept of the most great peace. He said to the world of humanity, he wrote to the leaders of the world, and he told them that I have come to you from God in order to help you to establish a universal peace. And he said in order to do that, what is necessary is that all the peoples of the world would be united in their views and beliefs of a religion. That message from Baha'u'llah, that invitation from Baha'u'llah was not accepted. The leaders of the world ignored that call. Consequently, a number of years later, the manifestation of God for this age wrote again to the people of the world, to the leaders of the world, and told them that now that you have rejected the most great peace, it is the hope of the manifestation of God that you happily would accept the lesser peace, so that at least the affairs of your society would be better, so that at least your people would be more comfortable. Well, that call has been left unheeded. The humanity did not respond. The parents haven't responded. The leaders haven't responded. Consequently, we are now in a stage in the world, in a situation in a world, that the world of humanity, this planet Earth, is actually in danger of destroying itself. And consequently, the consciousness of people has begun to become alive. People have to begin to realize that the situation is extremely critical. So the peace movements have started everywhere in the world. And in the vanguard of these peace movements are the youth everywhere. In essence, what we are saying to the youth of our time, to our beloved children, to our brothers and sisters, is that we have failed you, that we have not responded to the call of the manifestation of God. And we have created a world filled with all kinds of destructive instruments when we are putting it in your hands. So hopefully you would do something about it. Hopefully you would not respond to the call of God the way that we have responded. That you would try to make this world better. This is fundamentally what the parents, what the older people, what the leaders of the world are telling their young in this world. That we have failed you, and now it is your time, it is your responsibility to do something about it. Now basically, the same kind of a message is being given by the Baha'i parents, by the Baha'is who are older, to the young people. In essence, we are telling to our young people that we have created a very difficult world, and we hope that you would begin to create peace in it. Now, as you know, my dear and beloved friends, the route to peace is true peace. Abdul Baha has made it very clear that if we want to establish peace, we have to establish unity in this world. Now there are fundamentally, for the youth and for everybody else, three types of unity that are essential to establish. The first unity that people have to establish is a unity within themselves. People should begin to become a united, integrated human being. How many times in our everyday life we live a life of disunity at the core of our own being? How often we realize that our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions are quite disunited. That we feel one thing, we think another thing, and we still do a third thing. This state of disunity affects all the people of the world. But of all the people of the world, the only individuals who would be able to create a unity within themselves are Baha'is. In a most magnificent way, Baha'u'llah has clarified for us how we can establish this unity. And it is my hope that the young people tonight and all their friends and their parents and everyone ponder upon this process of creating unity inside and within themselves. Baha'u'llah said that we have been created to know and to love God. And he said, this is the purpose of life of a human being. On another occasion, he said that the purpose of our life is to be the cause of an ever-advancing civilization. At one time, Amatul Baha Ruya Khanum reports that a person asked the beloved guardian, what is the purpose of life for a person, for an individual Baha'i? And he said, to be the cause of unity in this world. Thinking about those processes clearly shows that for a Baha'i, what he thinks, what he feels, and what he does, all of them should be as such that would bring harmony, love, unity, and concord between them. Now, as you attempt to establish this unity within yourself, then you have to start to establish unity between yourself and your fellow human beings. As you know, one of the fundamental preoccupations of the people of our time is relationships. We live at an age and an era in which human relationships are in a state of crisis. There are no two human beings, Baha'u'llah laments, that are truly united in this world. We are seeing the signs of this unity of the husbands and wives, of the parents and the children, of the brothers and sisters, and sisters and sisters, and brothers and the friends. This is an era in which human relationships have become the most difficult, the most painful, the most tasking than ever they have been. Have you thought why? Why is it that at this stage, at this time in the history of our life, the human relationship should be so critical and so difficult? The fundamental reason for this seems to be that the people of our time have cut the most important relationship that they ever have had, and which stays at the core of their being. And that is the relationship of the individual human being with his Creator. When man separates himself from his God, when man does not allow himself to become in touch with the spiritual reality of his own being, and that fundamental relationship between the individual and the Creator is hampered, when that occurs, no other relationship would succeed. Does not matter how much that individual tries to improve the relationship, it would not succeed. Does not matter how many group therapies he attends to go, and how many weekends he spends talking about relationships, and how many books he reads, and how many times he sits with his fellow human being and said, let us consult and talk and discuss. If his relationship with his God is not complete and united and established, he would not be able to improve his relationship with his fellow human beings. So one of the challenges that are put before the youth of us today is to become individuals who, by virtue of their relationship with their God, are truly able to relate to their fellow human beings. Once this has been established, once you have established the unity within yourself, and then the unity between yourself and your fellow human beings, then of course you have to give your time to the establishment of unity between all the people and the kindreds of the earth. Here is the process that you have to establish a Bahá'í society as called for in the message of the Universal House of Justice to this conference. We have to create a Bahá'í society. The young people are going to be the builders of this society. A society that would be marked by creativity, by joy, by togetherness, by harmony. A society that would reflect for the first time the qualities of the heavens and the angels, rather than the qualities of the earth and the animals. A society that the best that I could describe it is in the following story. The story goes something like this, that this man died and went to the other world, and they came and they said, hello, we are very glad to see you, welcome. And the man was very happy that he has been welcomed to the next world, and he thought to himself, I must be important. And then they said, you want to have a tour? He said, of course, I would be delighted to have a tour. They said, you want to have a tour of the heaven or the hell? And he thought to himself, he said, well, I'm going to live in heaven, so I better go and have a tour of hell and get the hell over with it, so that then I would be able to enjoy the rest of my time. So he was taken to see the hell. They opened the doors of hell, and he entered, and lo and behold, it was beautiful. It was the most beautiful sight that he had seen. There were people all over, but the most important thing that there were trees, there were flowers, there were arrays of all kinds of flowers and birds, and everything was beautiful, was gorgeous. They informed him that the weather, contrary to what he had been told before, was really very hospitable. Usually the temperature was between 22 and 23 centigrade, or around 70, 75 Fahrenheit. That, they said, is really nice place as far as the climate is concerned. And it was the lunchtime. And they had brought the food, and they laid it under the tree, and it was beautiful. The most beautiful, the most delicious food of all parts of the world. Primarily Persian food. Some, of course, French, little of any other place. They were delicious food. And he looked at it and he thought it was marvelous. Then they brought the inhabitants of hell. And they were awful looking people. They were angry and they were hungry. And they just came toward these foods like animals. And he noticed that all of them, they have been put around their arms forks in such a way that they were able to put the food in their fork and anywhere except into their mouth. They tried and tried very hard to partake of that food that was there, but they were not able to do so because of this force that they were on their hands. Finally exhausted, their bells rang, they came, they took the food away, and that was the end of it. And then he said, okay, I want to go to heaven. They showed him the heaven. Everything was identical. The place, the food, everything. They brought the people of heaven, the inhabitants of the heaven, and the inhabitants of the heaven had the same kinds of force tied to their arms. However, this time, the people who were sitting this side of the table fed the other people, and the other people fed this individual. This is the image that one can think of a society, a Bahá'í society that we are going to create. A society that is not going to be established on the competition that is so common in our society, not a society that even going to be on the basis of equality, but a society that is going to be on the basis of what is called in the writings of the faith, mawasat. The concept of mawasat is very interesting. There are two words in the language, Persian and Arabic. One is musawat, which means equality. And the other one is mawasat, which means preferring the other person over yourself. Baha'u'llah calls upon the people of Baha to develop the qualities of mawasat, to prefer others over themselves. Now these are the challenges that are put before our young people. But how could we establish it? How we could accomplish this challenge? How could we bring about the unity within ourselves, the unity between our knowledge of our feeling and of our act? It seems to me we all have had the experience of this at one time. You know, in one of the most moving, the most fantastic books of Baha'u'llah, The Seven Valleys, we read about different stages that an individual has to go in order to accomplish and achieve that level of spirituality that every human being, every Baha'i wants to achieve. When we read about those seven valleys, they sound very difficult. They sound extremely difficult. They sound almost totally difficult and impossible. However, Baha'u'llah in one of his writings says that at the moment that an individual accepts the manifestation of God, he goes through all the seven stages, all the seven valleys. So my dear friends, all of you have been there. All of you have gone through the seven valleys at the moment that you accepted Baha'u'llah as the manifestation of God for this age. However, once we get there momentarily, then we come back. And then we have to start again climbing the mountain. And it is this second climbing of the mountain that is difficult, that it requires a lot of courage, a lot of desire and motivation on our part, willingness on our part to suffer, willingness on our part to have discomfort. It is the second journey through these valleys or different stages of this mountain that becomes more difficult. But that is the process of everyday life. That's the process that we have to live and make our lives examples of courage, of knowledge, of luminacy, of all those qualities that Baha'u'llah has told us to have. And also it is through this process that we gradually begin to realize that there is two dimensions in each of us. One is the dimension of the ordinary self that we have, and the other dimension is the dimension of the heroic souls that are within us. That our objective has to be to get rid of our ordinary self and allow the heroic souls to emerge out of us. We are witnessing that process happening every day in Iran with the Baha'is who are martyred. You know, dear friends, I'd like to say a few words about this process of martyrdom. Many of these beloved friends whose names were read today were my contemporaries when I was living in Iran. Many of them were my teachers, whom I learned a lot from, whose classes I attended, whose firesides I attended. These individuals were ordinary people. However, these ordinary people, when the time came for them to witness to the reality and truth of the manifestation of God for this age, became heroic souls. You see, the word martyr means to become a witness. Through the act of your martyrdom, you become a witness to a reality. In the dispensation of the Bab, all those people who accepted the Bab, they were called witnesses. Because and if you want to translate that into the Arabic, they were called shaheed. Shaheed is a person who, on the one hand, you can understand to mean a martyr, and on the other hand, a witness. A martyr, through the act of martyrdom, becomes a witness to a reality. That is the reason that a living martyrdom is called upon us to do. Through act of teaching, through the act of trying to establish unity within ourselves, with our fellow human beings, and in the world of humanity, through that process, we become witnesses to the reality of Baha'u'llah. But more than that, or in addition to that, I should say, we become witnesses to the nobility of human beings. You know how odd it is that at this moment, two different conditions and events could happen by people who come from Iran. They have come here for the cause of unity, for the cause of love, for the cause of peace. Outside of this building, we have been told that the Muslims have arranged for a demonstration tonight in order to manifest a different kind of quality than what is here. A quality that goes exactly the opposite of the objective that we have here. Now that's very interesting, because it immediately manifests the two sides of a human being. It immediately shows how a human being can be enlightened or darkened. This process is within the power of every individual human being. It is in the power of every person to become an enlightened person, to become a spiritual person, to become a heroic soul. But to do so, the first thing that he needs to do is to submit his will to the will of his Creator, and to go into the threshold of the Almighty and to say, I am here, O my Lord, in order to dedicate myself to Thee. And through this act of dedication, I would be happy and content with whatever You desire. And I would do everything in my power to be the cause of all that is good and noble. This is the call upon every Baha'i in this hall and in this world. This is our mission. Our mission is to create a structure for peace, an atmosphere for peace, an army of peace, an army of unity. And through doing this, attract other people to us and make our numbers ever and ever more greater, because an army of peace never would be too big, and an army of war is always too large. Now, you could ask, or a person could say, how is it possible for me as an individual, an important person, a mere youth, to become the cause of unity? You may ask that. But you see, my dear friends, you have to remember, first of all, that the interaction between God and man is an ongoing interaction, is a never-ending interaction. Secondly, you have to remember that the cause of God is guided through Him. At the time of beloved Master, at the time of Abdul Baha, when the situation in the Holy Land and in Iran was in utmost difficulty, at that time, one night the beloved Master, after having been days and days in a state of sadness, came and was pacing back and forth. And finally one of the believers came to the beloved Master and said, "Oh Master, oh Abdul Baha, you can do anything that you want. You can change the situation. Why don't you do it?" And the beloved Master said, "Because it is our hope, our will, our desire to suffer in the cause of God, because the suffering is perfectly fine for the development of an individual and a society." He wrote a tablet at that time, and in that tablet is a very brief tablet. I say it for you and then I translate it for you, not exactly the same, but as I understand it. He says, "Huwallah, ey bande haq, himmati benema, و دامنی به کمر زن و قصد مقامی بلندتر از افلاک نما. ای بنده حق، رخش سری حاضر، میدان وسیع موجود، گوی سعادت در دست، گوی سعادت در پیش و چوگان عنایت در دست. وقت جولان است و ربودن گوی از میدان. من اون چه شرط بلاغت با تو میگویم، بشتاب بشتاب که وقت تنگ است و آهنگ مطرب نزدیک به انتها. اگر در این وضع تو کف نزنی، دف نزنی، آواز نخوانی و شهناز بلند ننمایی، دیگر در چه زمان مخمور و مست گردی؟ والبهاء علیک ای. He says, oh beloved, oh servant of God. In essence, he says that this is a time that all the requirements for serving the cause of God, for serving the humanity, all and every one of them are available and are before you. And if you do not begin to use this opportunity to take the advantage of this moment, if you do not become full of joy, full of happiness, full of the tremendous, fantastic motivation for the service of this cause of God at this time, at what time you would begin again to do so? Because your time would come to an end, and that would be the end of you. Now for the youth, that's the beginning of your time. I pray that would not come a time that you would remember this advice of Abdul Baha, and you would be full of sorrow and sadness that it is too late. It is my hope that you would not lose your hope. It is our hope, our generation's hope, that the youth of our time, with full hope, enthusiasm, bravery and courage, would begin to become the servants of humanity and would establish the cause of the universal peace. My dear and beloved friends, you should be proud of the history of the Baha'i faith and what it has done for the peace of the society. We have been in the vanguard of establishing the peace, and all the Baha'i administration around the world are the foundations of a society of peace. You should become aware of that reality, and you should dedicate your lives to it. No youth should live at this era in history of mankind without being fully aware of the tremendous choices that are before them. The choice of establishing the kingdom of God on earth, or allowing this world of humanity to destroy itself. And it is with absolute certainty and certitude that I say this, that the former would occur, and it would occur through the activities of the youth, the Baha'i youth. One final word, my dear friends. I earlier mentioned that it is extremely important that you wouldn't allow a separation to take place between yourself and your God. The relationship of a human being and his Lord is a love relationship. It is a love relationship which is of utmost importance. Baha'u'llah said, I knew of my love for thee, therefore I created thee. And he also says, love me, so I may love thee. And he also says that obey my commandments for love of me. The whole process is a process of love. And as you begin to do that, you would become ever more closer to the very core of your being. And in that process, the love relationship would continue, and the relationship between you and your human beings, fellow human beings, would improve. And that would be the first step toward establishing the oneness of mankind. I'd like to close with another short statement or prayer by Abdul Baha. In this prayer, Abdul Baha likens the believer to a nightingale that has been separated from his beloved, and he calls upon the nightingale to come and to sing the song of love, because the song of love, when it's chanted, when it's sang, brings the individual, the lover, closer to his beloved. He says, Huwallah, ای بلبل خوشحالان گلشن عشق، وقت آن است که از فرقت پرحرقت سلطان گل در صحن چمن بنالی و بزاری و بسوزی و بگدازی و این ترانه آغاز کنی و این نوا بنوازی و کار دلها بسازی. ای مهر منور، ای روح مصور، ای نور مشهر، فریاد ز هجرانت. ای شمس حقیقت، ای نور هویت، ای شمع هدایت، فریاد ز هجرانت. Abdul Baha, in this statement of his, touches at the very core of the heart of every believer. He calls upon the believers not to allow themselves to be separated from their beloved. It is the time that they go to their beloved, to love their beloved, to get closer to him. So the message to the youth of our time and to all of us is that this is the time of love, this is the time of excitement, this is the time of joy, this is the time that we cannot stay calm, that we cannot stay sedated, that we have to begin to be full of joy, full of purpose, and with total determination to dedicate our lives to this great cause and to the cause of the establishment of the universal peace. Allahu Akbar.